Redditors with real-life butterfly effect stories, what happened and what was the series of events and outcomes. About 20 years ago I was watching a TV show about a guy in Australia who feeds the homeless. At the end they interviewed a few of the homeless who all said he was great, and their names flashed up on the bottom of the screen. One of the guys had the same name as my brother, who I hadn't seen for about 15 years. I looked at the screen, squinted ... and there under the dirt and grime was my brother, who was an addict and lost touch with us years ago. I called the TV program and got the name of the feeder guy. He contacted my brother and passed on my phone number. A couple of days later I got a call and told him he could come live with me. And he did. He moved in at my place, then the next morning went up the road to get a newspaper to look for a job. This was about 2000, came back and he'd found someone advertising for English teachers in China. He asked me what I thought. I said, "What have you got to lose?" So off he went, and loved it. Kept telling me to go too. So 6 months later I quit my job, sold my car, moved everything I wanted to keep over to my older brother's place. And left for China. I was there for 18 years. I met a girl, got married, bought an apartment, had 2 kids. Then the Hong Kong troubles came and I moved back to Australia a few months ago. And it all started from watching a TV show and seeing a name I knew. I went to Amsterdam to meet up with friends. On the way back there was a train at the station, but the display didn't show information. I decided to ask a random guy who was entering the train if this was the right one. It was, and we start chatting. Holy shit, this guy is a perfect match for my mum. I asked him he would like to date her. He agreed, because of the unique condition. They had a relationship within a month, lived together within a year. 11 years later still together, married for 4 years. All because of a broken display. I was supposed to go to a U2 concert with this girl was friends with, her boyfriend, and a couple other people. I had a knack for getting good seats at shows, so it was up to me to get tickets. She went nuts and accused me of trying to break into her house to clean her carpets while she was in Croatia, so I kept the tickets. They hadn't paid me yet, because I still wanted to go, but not with them because they were really good seats. I went to a street fair in town a couple of weeks later and ran into a girl I was friends with from high school who loved U2. I sold her a ticket and she asked if she could bring a friend, which just made me think, who? I'm selling another one of these really pricey tickets. The girls show up at my place day of show and her friend smiles as she is walking in. I saw the smile and knew that was it. I'm going to be spending the rest of my life chasing that smile. Well over 20 years, a couple of kids and dogs later, and as soon as I finish typing this I'm headed to bed to snuggle up next her. TL Doctor, I met my wife because one of my friends went nuts and accused me of trying to clean her carpets while she was in Croatia. Some guys are looking for volunteers to go join a group that goes behind enemy lines. No one volunteers. They randomly select my grandfather. Everyone that didn't join that group in that camp was killed on front lines. Not me, but one of my flight instructors. He was supposed to fly Senator Hines but was unavailable. That particular flight, while trying to determine if the nose gear was down properly, had a mid-air collision with a helicopter where everyone died. If my instructor had taken the flight, he was very experienced, as he was supposed to and managed to land safely, Senator Hines probably would have beat out G.W. Bush for the Republican nomination and therefore the presidency. As Hines was a moderate, the Second Iraq War might not have happened. Edit. Thank you for the silver, kind stranger. Not my story but my parents. My dad left the RAF in 1953 and began working in a local factory. He'd been working there for roughly 6 months when his dad passed away. My dad was distraught, and struggled to cope with his grief, particularly as his own dad was reasonably young when he died. He ultimately decided that a combination of grief and a growing sense of alienation outside of the RAF was too much and decided to re-enlist. A few days before he was due to formalize his re-entry, He was approached by a colleague at work who told him that one of the girls liked him and would like to go on a date. My dad was fairly introverted at this stage, and although he agreed to go on the date, he never showed up, partly because he suspected people were setting him up. The day after, his colleague asks him where he was, as the girl waited for him for a while and was a little upset when he was a no-show. My dad was a little nonplussed by this, and couldn't believe it had actually been a genuine thing. He asked if he could have a second chance, and she agreed to it. On the night of the date he arrived, trying to act as cool as possible, but as soon as he saw her, he knew he wouldn't be acting cool. He fell for her straight away, and after he'd dropped her off at home, said he floated home. They were married a year later, had 4 children, 13 grandchildren, and 11 great-grandchildren. They both passed away in 2017, within 6 months of each other. 63 years of marriage and a large, loving family. I realize this may not fit the description of a butterfly effect, but to us it is, and we are always thankful for it. Turned 16, had like 3K saved up and my parents let me pick dinner one night. Picked a local Italian place, that has an empty lot next door, that always has used cars parked there. That night I found a cool car that I ended up buying. That got me online to learn more about that car, which turned me into a car guy, which kept me working more hours to fund said car, which kept me away from some potential problematic friends who were into drugs and alcohol. So cars trump loser friends. In 2015, I was in college, working at Subway, and I felt like my life was trash. I didn't feel like I was going anywhere with anything. I had made the mistake of leasing a car and getting my hours cut at Subway because my manager sucked. It was a dark time. I was on Craigslist and I found an ad for a position at a dealership and thought, why not? What do I have to lose? I went in and interviewed and passed on to the second interview with another manager. That other manager and I chatted for a while, but he had a question that I feel would have made or broken my entire life if I hadn't answered it right. What is your dream car? This dealership was more of an American car dealer rather than import car, and all I knew about were imports at the time. I looked outside and saw a Mustang, and so I said I think a Mustang would be my dream car, and then he leaned in and said, what year? I was sweating bullets at this point. I had no idea about Mustangs. I knew I didn't like the new ones, but a classic was nice. I randomly came up with a number and said 1964? And he's like, that's the first generation Mustang, so you're telling me you know your stuff? And I just smiled. I got the job. Worked there for 2.5 years. Met my husband there, who had gotten fired 4 months before I started but was rehired 2 years into my career there, so he has a bit of a butterfly effect story of his own. I feel if I had said anything other than 1964 Mustang, I would have never gotten that job. And yes, I know technically it was the 1964.5 Mustang. About a year into that job I did get a Mustang. I felt like it was the perfect fit as I had accidentally answered a question with the perfect answer. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more.